In the first part of this workshop, I'm going to be showing you how to work with the acetate digital images, and I'm going to use, as you can see, there's lots of different ones here, really good high contrast in that. And this one here I'm going to use, it doesn't have as much high contrast, but it's a lobster pot, so I think it'll fit in with our theme. And I'm going to introduce you to my ultraviolet sun box. This is where I keep my sun in a box, because we don't always have it in the sky. You won't need that. You'll be using the natural sunlight, but I just want to show you how I do it when I don't have the sunshine. In the second part, I will be mixing chemicals and showing you how to brush the chemicals on the paper, and then later on we will develop those papers after they dry. This is my studio setup for today. It's usually my office where I work, but I have set up a painter and decorating table, so I'm able to do this workshop today. Okay, what this red box is an ultraviolet exposure unit. And if you open it up, you can see we have got light tubes, and there's like a soft felt or foam backing. This is used to create artificial sunlight when we don't have it outside. That's the lovely grey day that we have today, if you can see that. So there's no sun there at all. It doesn't mean to say you won't get exposure. You can leave it for long enough, but it will take a long time. So this was an image of a sheep skull that we found on a mountain, and it was a photograph that I took on the mountain. I brought it into a creative software package, something like Photoshop, or there's some free tools if you can download them. I think there's one called GIMP. So you can bring the photograph in, you can turn the image into black and white, and then you can inverse the image, and I'll do a wee demonstration on Photoshop on that later on. So this was then printed out on the acetate as a reverse image. You can also print words onto the negative, and as you can see, you can actually get a really good result, and this is because there's a very high contrast between the black and the white. There's no grey tones in this image. This is a photograph here of like lobster pots and the ropes and the textures. So I brought that photograph into Photoshop and made a negative, and I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm just going to show you in Photoshop how to take an image and turn it into a negative. So this here is the image that I used for, and it is of the lobster pots. You can sort of see that there's a lot of colour, there's a lot of texture and a lot of things going on. It's not a very high contrast one, but it does have a lot of texture in it. Pull that into Photoshop. I'm going to go up to Image, Adjustments, and I am going to go to Black and White, which turns into a black and white image, and then I'm going to go up to again. I'm going to say okay there. I'm going to go up again, Image, and I'm going to go into Adjustments, and I'm going to come over to Invert, which has now turned that into a negative, like an old time analog film negative. So that's what I would print out on the acetate, the inkjet acetate, and that we could use going forward as a negative. I have laid my print on top of the ultraviolet tubes, and I'm putting my treated paper on top. It's not big enough, but it'll be enough to catch some of the image. Now, if you were doing this, your image would actually be sitting on top of the paper, and the sun would be your direct sunlight coming down from above. But because I don't have the sun here, I'm using the tubes as the sun, and they come from the bottom. Close this over and lock it down, And I'm only going to put it on for a minute. So what's happening in there, I'll give you a wee quick peep, is there is light. There we are, we can see we've got a lovely imprint of something. So I'm going to put this in the water. I'm going to agitate this. So as you can see, we're starting to get sort of some of the nice textures and that coming up. I think maybe if I leave this one now, as it dries, the blue may deepen and may create more of a contrast. I'm now going to show you how to mix the chemicals. We are going to mix 20 grams of our ferric ammonium citrate in 100 milliliters of water, and we're going to mix 10 grams of our potassium ferric cyanide in 100 milliliters of water. So I'm just going to unscrew this lid and show you the colour of this. So ideally if you wear a mask when you're using this, just in case you inhale any, it's this is like a very red colour, which I think anything red, you know, usually just sort of know that you don't, just be a wee bit careful. And this is the colour of the ammonium ferric citrate. As you can see, it's like a very sort of nearly luminous green colour. Okay. I've weighed out 20 grams of the ferric ammonium citrate, and then I will weigh out 10 grams of the potassium ferric cyanide. The next step is to get 100 milliliters of water and dissolve each of the powders separately in the water. I'm using a wooden skewer here to mix the solution. You don't want to use metal, you either want to use like a plastic spoon or a wooden skewer, so I'm using a wooden skewer in this particular instance. In another clean jar, I'm adding another 100 milliliters of water, and then I will add the rest of the powder. Once again, I'm going to use, this time I'm using a plastic knife to stir the solution with. Again, avoid using metal utensils. You end up with a green solution and a red solution. So just make sure that they are mixed thoroughly and that all the powder has dissolved. At this point, mix the two solutions together, and again, just give them a bit of a stir with a plastic or wooden skewer. If you want to keep the solution stored in a brown bottle for using at another time, or cover your jar with some sort of paper or coloured paint. You can use white paper, or you can use newspaper, or you can use maybe a plastic bag or some sort of anything that you can attach and block out the daylight. So that'll stop the liquid inside from further developing, which means I can store that in a cool dark place and reuse it again. Okay, so the next stage would be to actually coat your paper with the chemical. Ideally we'd be using a foam brush. I don't happen to have one here. You shouldn't really be using anything with metal, so there's maybe a bit of metal at the end of that, at the top part of this brush here. So I'm just going to try and just get the liquid on the brush without actually touching the metal. Get your liquid, and you can completely, as you can see, it's coming out like a green you can completely cover the whole lot of your paper so it's fully coated. If you've got gloves, I would wear gloves. So that's fully coated, so I'm going to leave that somewhere to dry, and it needs to be sort of in a dark place. So what I've done here is just use the actual brush strokes on the picture or on the paper, so you're seeing a much more raggedy edge, but it can give a really nice effect. I'm going to be putting these away again because the light will actually start exposing them immediately, so I just want to be, so even you can have gaps in the middle, so you're only getting fragments of images. So I'll put these away to dry, and we'll see. I'll show you some samples of the different techniques. I'm just going to do another sample here. This is a household paintbrush. Again, avoid the metal. You could either put a bit of masking tape around it or just avoid it whenever you're doing your brushing. But it just gives a different quality of brush stroke. So you can see some of the nice brush marks that you're getting with that. I'm actually just going to store these in a box just to but to try and keep them separate, because then I can open it'll be dark within the box. So maybe even set that one up right. Ideally it's trying to leave them flat, but we don't always have that luxury, so maybe I can put something in here where that's going to sit away from the other ones and fold the box over. So these are things, you would do this for your actual workshop. So you could, so when you go to get your paper, it's ready to use. So this, I've created a really dark space. Here's some samples of some that I made earlier, and it's showing you the different types of brush marks that you can have, and you're still getting sort of the image coming through in a sort of quite abstract way. While this one would have been fully coated from corner to corner. So it just shows you the different types of effect that you can get. With the paper that we pre-treated yesterday, we're going to have to work very quickly with. You can see it's turned green, it's dry. I'm going to use this. I'm going to use it with one of the negatives. We're not going to get all of the image due to the fact that this is like painterly, so we're going to just capture bits of it. So I'm just going to use this, try the skull one. So I'm going to lay it down. So it's going to be a very abstract image of things that we found. You can see the green is coming through to the other side. This is a heavier paper. It's holding on to the actual solution that we painted on it. So we have to make sure that we can wash it out. It'll take. We will probably need to do this under a running tap because it is a heavier paper. I'm going to set that again for 2 minutes and we'll see how that works. Okay, we're going to have a look and see is there any impressions. So we can sort of see that there's a slight difference in tone, and our image, our liquid is now gone blue rather than green. See, the green water is coming up on this one. I'm going to take this into the sink. Now you'll let it run. You do have to be careful because the water here has done a wee bit of damage to the picture, but you can see the part of the skull coming through. You can see its eye, and you can see the teeth down here, and you can see the texture of the grass from the mountain. So I'm just going to leave that to dry. So I'm going to do this skull image again on a different shape of paint marking, just to see the difference between the one that we've already done. So you can get this coming up really well. Because I was green in these two, I just left them soaking in water for a little longer rather than running water, to see if that helps lift it a little more. In this one I'm adding some of our found materials and our print, just to see what, to experiment and see what we get, effect we get. So these are the results of the printing today with the paper that we actually coated ourselves. So we've all different types of effects. These ones were using the digital negatives, and this one was using digital negative, but it's only using it over fragments and splatters of the actual solution. Again, this is quite nice. It's a digital negative, and there is wee variations in the print, which actually I think give it that sort of nearly underwater feel. This shows you the brush strokes, which those sort of very free brush strokes work against a very sort of the image, which is quite structural. With little hints of flowers coming through this, and it looks nearly like it's sort of quite organic. This was the one that we did with the print and the flower, and this was the original one we did with the materials that we picked up from the beach. And so is this, although they're harder to see. This is like the seaweed and all that's coming in here, but it sort of fits very well in with the theme. So I hope you enjoyed this instructional video, and I really look forward to seeing all the work that you're going to be doing. Thank you.